How do you institutionalize that relationship, and how do you kind of ensure that the federal government is hearing from what's working in states and localities?
Well, I wish I had some fancy high-tech answer, but it's basic, good common sense conversation. It's listening. Monthly, we meet with all of the intergovernmental organizations, from the state legislators to the mayors to the League of Cities to the states. We meet with everybody and put on the table what's going right and what's going wrong. What are you seeing that are needs? We're fortunate to have 6 regional offices. Our 6 regional offices extend those conversations outside the Beltway and have real roll-up-your-sleeves conversations with local elected officials and with governors. We have 2 programs that mandate that really we do this. One is the Workforce Investment Act, which funds job training through both states and local elected officials, and the unemployment insurance program. Our office oversees that, which is really the consummate partnership with states. They run the program, we try to facilitate it. And in these troubling times, we've allowed interest-free borrowing for the states as their state trust funds have just become exhausted. So, I mean, to go back and answer your question very simply, it's actively engaging people in conversation. It's responding when they have needs. And quite frankly, it's as much listening as it is dictating to them what they should be doing. Because, you know, DC is an entity unto its own. I just saw somebody in the hall with a badge with Indianapolis. Indianapolis, very different than Miami, very different than Dallas, very different than New York and LA. We can't, from inside the Beltway, have a one-size-fits-all that benefits larger cities and negatively impacts smaller cities or counties. So it's constantly listening and seeing how our policies have to adapt and change. And luckily, we're able to do a lot through regulation and guidance, and we don't have to wait for statutory change. But I do hope that everyone in here that is involved with the Workforce Investment Act would agree with me that a law that I was privileged to be a part of with Senator Kennedy that was written in 1998 needs to be reauthorized so that it can accurately reflect the needs of the workforce in 2012. Mm-hmm.
I wonder, as you are out kind of listening to states and localities, are there specific best practices that come to mind as ideas that you've seen that are really working really well in terms of either attracting jobs or training workers that you think are worth stealing or at least, you know, kind of suggesting to other jurisdictions?
Yeah, we blatantly steal every good idea we see because we know the urgency that we're working under to get people back to work. But I think, you know, I think everybody here probably has examples in their own local area where things have really worked. And I think they come under the umbrella of timeliness. You know, businesses work on a different time schedule than educational institutions or government. So therefore, we have to make sure that we're responding quickly enough to keep them in your local area, or quite frankly, to keep them in the United States and not offshoring jobs. I think the second piece is that because so many of the new businesses that are adding jobs in our local areas are small, we can't rely only on the old ways that we did business through large trade associations, you know, through HR organizations. We still rely on them heavily, but we have to have new strategies for getting to these small businesses. And I think most of the elected officials agree with that. You know, by the time they learn about a new business, they really, the business is already left because it didn't get the attention it needed. So just to give you a few of the things that I think are really promising, I think that local elected officials who have given, you know, created a job czar, whatever they call them in their area, but really made it somebody's line responsibility to outreach to businesses and to find out, you know, how to help them go through all the bells and whistles. You know, in the federal government, it's regulation, but I don't know whether your audience hears something different. Every time I go to a local area, businesses are complaining about how hard it is to build, how hard it is to get through the local processes, how it takes months instead of weeks. So that those are the kinds of things that I think are being solved by whatever that job czar is, you know, the business czar. I think the other promising practice that I see, and there's probably many people here who operate these or have them in their local areas, are incubators. You know, these small businesses are able to, in an incubator setting, get the care and nurturing they need and not spend the money on things, from simple things like a copier, which to us seems natural in the federal government. We have copiers all over the place. But when you think about a new business person getting a color copier to do business, it's $2,500, $3,500. They can't afford that. And I think, you look at the tax functions and the payroll functions that I've seen at many of these incubators, it's fabulous. And as they become toddler businesses, they come back and support the new businesses. And, finally, I think the piece is, of course, selfishly, how are mayors helping to really be the connector between economic development, education, and workforce development. And mayors and local and county officials who have figured that out are the places that are attracting businesses, because the business owner doesn't have time to figure out what tax incentives are there, what other incentives are there, where's the workforce, who should I really talk to. So the local elected officials who have made that seamless and transparent, they're the people who seem to be attracting businesses. And sometimes they're in really obscure places, places that you haven't heard of before, not the cities you would recognize from your 5th grade geography class, and when you say, gosh, how did they do this? It's careful planning and attention to detail, and I think those are the things that have made local areas successful.
Just a side note on the incubators, we did a profile of the mayor of Boston, Tom Menino, in January, and what they're doing with their innovation district and that incubator is kind of stunningly successful. I don't know if you...
Yeah, I mean, I adore Tom Menino, so full disclosure, I think he's incredible. And one of the most interesting things that I've seen with his innovation design is that he includes the word all. Tom Menino has always been completely devoted to young people and is one of the mayors loudly ringing the bell about we have the lowest engagement of young people in the workforce since we've been collecting that data 1945. He's been ringing that bell about the importance of summer jobs, but he's also been ringing the bell about ex-offenders. And many of our urban areas have large percentages of populations in certain neighborhoods coming back, have paid their debt to society, but can't get a job. And Menino and his innovation piece is all inclusive in that. They want to make sure that they're keeping the MIT and my own alma mater, Boston College graduates there in Boston. They want the best and the brightest, but they're not forgetting about other indigenous populations there who may have had a glitch in their record. He wants to invite them to come back and really have opportunities. So he's amazing. And I've seen that, I've seen that kind of thing. I was in Youngstown with Congressman Ryan a few months ago and looking at that incubator that they've started. But you see, it's so amazing when you go around the country and see these brilliant ideas everywhere. It's really fun. It's the best part of this job, going and seeing all the fun things that people are doing. And then we love when you profile things because it gets out to millions of readers, but we try to use our own Department of Labor weekly newsletter to really promote these kinds of stories. And I would encourage, it doesn't cost anything. You get it Thursday night, usually late because the people are trying to get it done and include as much as they can. But really subscribe to that DOL newsletter. You will find some great ideas. And I would ask everybody in here, tell us your story, in 500 words or less, how we can get your good ideas out there, because this is a time when we need to put partisanship behind and just worry about, rebuilding our country. So the more we can get good stories out so people aren't totally relying on reinventing the wheel themselves, the faster we'll be the country we want to be for the 21st century.
Well, in the spirit of exchanging ideas, I'd like to go ahead and open it up for any questions that you all might have in the audience. Just raise your hand, and like I said, we have some microphones, so if you could wait for a microphone. Peter? There's one right behind you.
Vanna's right behind you.
I have a cottage in Michigan, so I'm sort of more aware of what goes on there than many states. And strangely enough, it's the fastest falling unemployment rate in the country, in part because of manufacturers moving in, very high specialized manufacturers moving into southern part of the state, to try to take advantage of that labor pool that was laid off a long time ago.
That's right.
But the sad part of it is that labor pool isn't what they thought it was. That the number of people who have the skills to do what needs to be done in the new kinds of manufacturing ain't there. And it makes one think that this system I thought we had with community colleges and vocational care and so on, to provide that kind of labor force is somehow not providing it. What can the feds do and what can the states do about that?
Well, you know, Michigan is such an amazing story, and I think all of us are so delighted that the American auto industry is back, and back better and bigger than it ever was in many ways in terms of ideas and thoughts. Also thrilled in Michigan to see the development of the lithium battery business. You know, I think all of us take great pride that we're not going to let another country be #1 in the production and innovation in lithium batteries. We're going to fight for that. And I know the two companies that I've seen, one outside of Detroit, ABC, and the other in Charlotte, North Carolina, you know, both are full forward being #1 in the country. But I think you bring up a really good point. I think early on we all recognized that while we adore our community colleges, many of them had gotten lost in the size of their mission. You know, their mission to do GEDs, their mission to help 65 and olders, you know, do the kinds of things they want to do, like pottery and self-help and exercise kinds of things. Their mission to get people in a low-cost way onto their bachelor's degree, and their mission to do job training. When you think about the enormity of their mission, it's almost amazing that they were doing as well as they were, being all things to all people. So the first thing Congress, and many of us bash Congress whenever we can, and I think it's important to recognize the great things that they've done for us. When they changed the student loan business, they gave the Department of Labor $2 billion with a B dollars over 4 years to build the capacity of community colleges. So we've awarded the first round, $500 million of those grants in the fall. We'll be advertising for the second round. And I think what we're doing is very different than anything that's been done before. Previously, all of federal agencies were in a dependency mode with community colleges. We gave them $1 million grant to train X number of people. And what happened when you look backwards is when the training money to give people free tuition evaporated, so did the program. So what this is doing that's different is saying we're not paying any tuition with this money we're giving you. Instead, we're demanding that you go to business and you have real conversations with business to say, what aren't we doing to give you the workforce that you need? So this money will be used for capacity building. It'll be used for equipment because, quite frankly, because of state budgets and the limited money they can use in the federal budget, the Perkins money, they haven't been able to get the kinds of equipment they need, whether it's to do simulation labs for healthcare, or to get the equipment to train people to do the high-tech jobs that you're talking about that are opening in advanced manufacturing. So I think that $2 billion is an important investment, but equally important are the conversations that are happening at the state level and at the federal level with the leadership in community colleges to really look at what they're doing and get them. You heard me say before, we have to move away from thanks very much, see you in September, because out-of-work employees can't wait that long and businesses can't wait. And you know, I would say it would be hard for me not to do a pitch for Henry Ford and Macomb in the Detroit area. They're living that every day. You know, whether they're doing, and the other colleges in Michigan have tried very hard to adapt as well. In Central Michigan, you have Raleigh Film Studios, which is open. That community college had no knowledge of the film industry. They didn't know what a boom was. They didn't know how to train people. Within 6 months, when those folks put money to take that old plant and establish it as a film studio, and luckily you have proud Michigan sons and daughters like the Cusacks, John and Joan Cusack, who said, yeah, we'll do films there, and some of the stars that also were born in Michigan went back. That film studio is doing very well. They don't want to take on Hollywood or Jupiter, Florida. They want to take on Vancouver. same weather, same kinds of structures outside. So I think Michigan's community colleges have really stepped up, and I think many of the other community colleges around the country were ahead of us in thinking outside the box. Now I think with some federal money, we're pushing that to a larger audience. I hope so, and I hope you'll hold us accountable to that. I hope we want to stay true to the fact that this money is capacity building and not sink back and letting people use this for just tuition. And I should add that this is specifically looking at dislocated workers, the needs of those dislocated workers who were trade impacted. So people like the Levins were very involved in making sure that we stay true to looking at the needs of those workers who, you're right, know how to work hard, know how to be loyal to an employer, but don't have the precise skills to be as competitive as they were today.
Next question, I think. If you could hang on just 1 second. Thank you.
I'm from an energy producing area, and there's a lot of demand for the products such as gas, oil, coal, timber, but it seems like we have a lot of workers on the sidelines waiting on regulatory approval. How do you work with the other federal agencies to streamline those approval processes so that we can get our workers to work and producing those products that we currently have workers standing on the sidelines now and are unemployed because we just can't get the federal regulatory approvals to move forward?
Well, first we had to get our own house in order, so I think we've reduced our time to everything. We also do guest worker visas, and so we spent the first 2 years kind of making sure before we threw stones at anybody else that we were timely and we were responsive. But I think you're seeing a move across government to walk that fine line, make sure people are safe, make sure we're doing things that protect workers and employers, because no employer wants to get sued for injury or death, but also thinking in a much more business timeline than necessarily in a government timeline. I hope you're seeing some improvements in that area, and if you're not, I really encourage you. I know labor is not alone in our push towards being more customer friendly. So really, instead, get in touch with the people, whoever, it's probably OSHA and EPA. OSHA is at labor. EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, isn't. I don't know what other entities do the regulations that you're talking about, but
It's primarily DEP for us.
right. So, I mean, get in touch with them and just tell them how long it's taking and move up. Don't stop at your regional person, because I think sometimes change is bottom up and trickle down, so that you have politicals who really want to speed up the process because we see the urgency, and some of the folks who are working at the local level are much more aligned with how things have always been done, because that's fair. So the more you can push it up to either regional offices where there would be some politicals, or the national offices in the agencies you're working with, and making sure you're getting attention to this, I think you'll find people pretty responsive. And happy to connect you with the people. You can get my information at DEP. Happy to connect you with some of the politicals if you don't know who they are.